Morning, America. That's right. It's morning for most of you, for all of you. It's after midnight here where I'm at, and I'm just out on a backpacking trip, and I want to go from one place I've been and head to another place I want to be. And so I thought I'd do an episode of What the Fuck's Up and show you some beautiful country along the way. Hopefully y'all will be able to see it. Some really, really nice canyon lands. I'm sure some of you have seen it before, but buckle up. So what we got here, let me throw my camera on real quick. Don't want to lose it. So what we got here in this, I'm just out here backpacking this beautiful canyon land. So you can go that way. Where I came from, the Milky Way's right up here, Scorpius. The core of the Milky Way's over here, and the arm comes up on over, and I'm sure you'll all be seeing a picture of that before long. But there's a canyon you can head on down. Really an absolutely lovely place. All these tall cliffs. So back out for about 4 miles. But what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about your government. The founding fathers were absolutely no fools. They would appear to have studied just about every government known to man before they drafted the Constitution of the United States, right? And so, they looked at dictatorship, one-man rule, sort of like the king. They came from a king, and in their long history. So you have a strong man, and that strong man rules everything, and everybody works for him. And kind of a shitty deal, if you ask me. I'm guessing the founding fathers thought it was a pretty shitty deal as well. They didn't seem to care for it much. And so they looked at aristocracies. And an aristocracy is sort of a government by the wealthy elite, right? You get to go work their land and make money for them and make them rich, while you typically have really no means of advancement, and you have to stay poor. And that's a pretty shitty deal as well. And so, if you look at the history of England, you had a king, and eventually the wealthy elite, the aristocrats. Isn't this cool as fuck? God, it's just so beautiful here. They sort of told the king, hey, yeah, we can't be having this anymore. We're going to have to give us some power. And so, time progressed, and you get the House of the Lords. And then they decided, well, what about the people? What about the people? The people said, hey, we want a part of this government action as well. So they created, the House of the Commons. And those are, of course, the commoners. So you have the commoners, and you have all the rich fuckers. And, they sit on opposite sides of their little parliamentary chamber, a little mouse. And they have to, try to figure things out. And so the founding fathers, looked at their history as a nation. Oh, shit. And they said, well, I'm going to have to put this fucking flashlight down. And they said, we don't really like this system when they became colonials. Because once they became colonials, they were really nobodies. Pretty cool. And so, ultimately they rebelled. They were a very intelligent group of people, and so they wrote the Articles of Confederation. They did that because they did not like federal power. So the Articles of Confederation basically gave the brunt of the power to the states and really limited what the federal government could do. And so it didn't work out too well. Federal government couldn't raise money, had to borrow money from the states, completely reliant on the states. And so this grand experiment of the United States of America almost failed. And as a result, they got together and they held a constitutional convention. And they drafted what is known as the Bill of Rights, or not Bill of Rights, sorry, the U.S. Constitution. The Bill of Rights would, of course, come later. And that is a very important document because that's what guarantees your rights as an American citizen. And so they drafted this Constitution, and what they did, it was an amazing thing. And they put in several safeguards, right? Call them checks and balances that are designed to ensure that not one branch can take the power of the other branches or of another branch, and that they can equally protect themselves. And so we see that in play today, right? And so you have the executive branch, right? President of the United States has the power to wage war, but it's Congress that has the power to declare war. Now the relationship has evolved over time such that you've got the president who needs sometimes an emergency authority to wage war overseas. And so, there are Supreme Court rulings and legislation out there that give him that power to wage war in an emergency, but he's got to go to Congress after a certain period of time and get approval to continue waging that war. And so it's those are checks and balances. And so the judiciary of course interprets the law And both Congress and the executive branch of government have, powers over the judiciary. For example, Congress could get rid of every district court in the United States. They are not, they're courts created by Congress. Or they could say, for example, merge the D.C. Circuit Court or District Court with a neighboring court, and thereby ensure that the D.C. Circuit, if it's become overly politicized, can go away. And then, of course, the president, he gets to choose judges. So if Congress wanted to, they could get rid of all the D.C. courts, just abolish them, and then create a new system of lower courts. The president would then appoint judges to those courts with, of course, Senate confirmation. And so these little checks and balances are what keep our system essentially running, and they did this because they did not want any single party, or they did not want any single branch, to accumulate all power. And so they have these tools they can use to adjust the ship, so to speak. And, the problem we've been having that I discuss quite a bit is of course the national security state. And I don't envision that the founding fathers envisioned such a national security state as we have today. I don't think they ever envisioned that the United States would become this huge monolithic military-industrial complex type of state. And so how do you deal with it? And so we've been lucky that it's about our 250-year anniversary coming up, and no one branch has been able to seize all the power of the other branches, although it seems like the judicial branch is trying to seize executive authority. But you also have checks and balances at the state level, right? And part of that was, of course, Congress. Congress, the House of Representatives was created to represent the passions of the people, right? And so they're elected every 2 years so that they would in fact be responsive to the people. And so that's where, the impetus for law comes into being. We have, congressmen passing law for their constituents. The Senate more typically used to represent the states until they became popularly elected. And that did away with a huge check and balance. So our Senate has also become very much like the House, responsive to voters. And the way the system was set up to work was that, when you make your tea, of course the tea in the kettle is too hot to drink. And so you pour it into your teacup so that it cools, and then you're able to drink it, right? And so, by analogy, the House of Representatives was that teapot, right? That heat, that passion of the people. And the Senate was the teacup, right? So the House had passed legislation and it would go sit in the Senate. Senate didn't have to worry about being responsive to the people. And so they could sit and deliberate and determine, whether it was a good idea to do it all. And, but the states are significant because the Constitution only gave certain powers to the federal government. Those powers are enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. When they passed the Bill of Rights, they added the 10th Amendment that said very clearly those powers that therein delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people, right? And so got a lot of issues with the Department of Education. That's not it's not in the U.S. Constitution as a federal government power. Neither is health or welfare. Those are state powers by virtue of the fact that the Founding Fathers did not list them in Article 1, Section 8. And so the 20th century, of course, was, the rise of fascism in America. And the very heavy centralization of power at the federal level of government. So what we've been looking at is the federal government and the national security state has sort of entered this unholy alliance with the Democratic Party, the National Democratic Party. And so, and then what people typically call rhino Republicans, right? The rhino Republicans are nothing more than institutionalists. They're Republicans who want to maintain the system as we have it, because they happen to like the system as we have it. It gives them a great deal of power because the national security state has a great deal of power. And so they want to keep that. It, of course, favors their re-election and makes it harder for the people to replace members of Congress who aren't very responsive and who are getting rich off the system, right? And so this unholy alliance between the institutional Republicans, Democratic Party leadership, and the national security state, which was very heavily politicized by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, they began a direct assault on our third branch of government, and what is historically referred to as our fourth branch of government. Of course, the third being the judiciary, the fourth being the media, but the national security state has long sought to control the media. They need them to put out, propaganda supporting the system to get the American people to buy off on, this need to have this humongous war-making state. And so they've been involved with the media for a very long time. But 2016 is about when they launched a massive assault on the media. They began going in the guise of national security, briefing our media about Russia and how Russia was influencing our elections, and that we needed to be able to censor speech in order to save democracy, right? So we're just gonna throw democracy out the window so that we can save it, I guess. That's the logic. And so the national security state has been embedded in our judiciary, embedded in our bar associations, primarily through the American Bar Association, which is very active with a lot of these national security law firms that exist. We know that the firms like Perkins Coie have a way too cozy relationship with executive agencies of law enforcement, and so when you get the national security agencies, of course they have the power to say, well, I can't tell you how I know this. You do not have the appropriate clearance, and therefore you're just going to have to trust my word as, a member of national security state. Then, that's very problematic, because, our legal system is a system in which, adversaries, pour the weight of their evidence into the scales of Lady Justice. And if the national security state has already put a few rocks in one scale before you even get to court, then we have no justice. And that's what all these non-governmental organizations, many of them have been created to do in the guise of protecting democracy. We destroy the judiciary. And so, this is one way the executive branch agencies have been able to significantly influence the judicial branch of government, and then accumulate more power than, of course, the states have. I like shining my light out, looking for eyeballs. Oftentimes when you're out out alone and out in the wild, miles and miles and miles from nowhere. You shine your light out and see something staring at you. It's pretty cool. But anyway, I just want Americans to have heart, because the founding fathers really did create a resilient system, a system that if one branch does in fact accumulate too much power, then there are ways for the system to right itself, and that's going to take your participation. We're coming up on the 2016 elections. I'm sorry, 2026. The 2026 elections could not be more important. In fact, I would argue they're more important, there's my lens cap, than the 2024 election. If we're going to right the system, folks, we need to elect a Congress that will help President Trump right the system. Because as we've seen, there's been a substantial amount in the past of corruption, greed, abuse of the U.S. taxpayer, and we get a lot of members of Congress who are hell-bent on maintaining that system. They love that system, they want to keep it, and truth be told, it's time to get rid of it. But with that, I'm going to urge you, stay awake. Keep urging people. If you know working class people, folks, you need to tell them to vote for the MAGA candidate. You need to tell them to vote for candidates who will eliminate the income tax and replace it with an income earning tariff. Right? That way you earn what you keep, folks. And if some prices go up because of tariffs, then you earned what you keep. You get to decide what you can buy. They can't force you to buy anything. And so, they keep talking about the billionaires. But I got to tell you, an income earning tariff would be the worst thing on the planet for the billionaires, because they buy tons more shit than we do, right? Luxury yachts, luxury airplanes from overseas, wherever the case may be, and the advantage to them paying an income tariff whenever they make these luxury purchases or whatever purchases they buy is that it will replenish the coffers of the U.S. Treasury and help us get rid of this debt before our children go totally broke. And so an income earning tariff, if the wealthy did not like paying it and they had influence, they would of course then relocate manufacturing to the United States, wherein it would create jobs for the American people. And so if there was an income earning tariff and it generated good paying jobs, that's a win-win, folks. And the biggest win is your Congress would no longer be able to play you for the fool by using the marginal income tax rates to buy your vote. And if they simply can't tax your earnings, then they simply can't use those earnings to bribe you, which is a good thing. So stay awake. Keep on your toes, folks, because we are far from out of this mess, as the national security state and the Democrat allies and the institutional Republicans have absolutely no intention of letting up, surrendering, or otherwise giving up the system. So with that, I'm going to say peace.